Welcome back, everybody, to Willie Picks MMA for UFC Winnipeg. They've brought the UFC to Canada, and we are super excited to break down this card. Coming off an absolute banger at UFC 327. If you guys want to see the betting results from the last video, go check out my early picks where I gave you guys my early leans for all of these fights. Today, we're going to be breaking down all the fights just a little bit more in depth. We've done a lot of film study, a lot of statistical research, and we're going to be talking about the fights. So later on, I'm thinking about, not today, I'm thinking about bringing on another segment going into talking about where the money's at, based on where the public's at, based on where the sharp money's at, presented on, I want to say it's like Odds Jam or like Outlier or something. They have where all the money's at, and it kind of gives you data on that. I want to start talking about that. I just got to kind of figure out how to implement it here. From the last I checked, they didn't have the data readily available on Thursdays, which is what I want, obviously, because that's when we do these live streams. And that was kind of the problem that I had. And I had contacted them about trying to get the data points in a little bit earlier, because I mean, what is it you like? It takes me a good amount of time to look at these fights, you know, whether it's film or stats. And what does Friday day give me in regards to how, like, I can analyze the stats? You know what I'm saying? Like, Friday during the day doesn't give me any time to really look at anything, you know, because the fights are Saturdays, so it's like, what, I got like 24 hours or less to break these stats down, you know? So I contacted them about kind of getting those data points in a little bit sooner, especially, you know, maybe you can track it throughout the week. Just like kind of how in this week we saw a massive line movement in the Mike Malott and Gilbert. A lot of fights had a ton of line movement this week. And, you know, Odds Jam, or what, I forgot what it was. I got to go back and look at the emails because it was, you know, months ago. But to make a long story short and a short story shorter, we're going to figure it out. But let me get the live chat cranking here just so we can be answering these comments. Should have done that before we started. Sorry about that, guys, but just give me a second. All right, yeah, boom. We got the live chat popping. Let's move on to the first fight of the night. And as always, if you guys like this content, I'm just starting the long form YouTube content. I've been grinding the short form on Instagram, TikTok, and, you know, the YouTube shorts. If you guys like this long format content, like the video, hype it up, you know, watch the whole thing. I've give some pretty decent analysis, I want to say, on all the fights, and we want to make it entertaining, and I want to bring some extra value with you, or to you, with that Odds Jam that I was talking about earlier. But like I said, like, subscribe, and if you guys want all of my bets for UFC Winnipeg, I've got the link in the bio, or in the bio and the description. We've got a free 7-day trial going on right now, and if you want to join my free Telegram where I'm giving out free bets and my free fight breakdowns every single week, it's going to be, like I said, in the Telegram, in the description, not the bio. And if you guys want to tell my DFS plays, some of the most profitable, not this year, but last year, some of the most profitable plays that I give out, we've got an Underdog link in the description, as well as BetOnline if you need a free $250. BetOnline is the best book to get early lines. You can't put too much action down. They limit a lot of the stuff, but still a pretty decent book, especially with the crypto deposits. So if you need $250, you know, in bonus bets for UFC Winnipeg, BetOnline's a great great resource. So is Underdog. They'll give you a free $50 plus a deposit bonus. So moving on, let's get into the first fight of the night. And that is going to be Jamie, the Gremlin Siraj, taking on John Yanis. So, Jamie Siraj 14 and 3, 31 years old, 150 pounds, but it says 150 pounds on Topology. It's really, this is a bantamweight fight. I think he fought once in, featherweight or lightweight. 5'8", sorry, we were getting text, reading text. 5'8", and the reach isn't there yet. We've got John Giannis, 9-4. Is he 9-4 now? I thought he had 10 wins. Give me a second. Let's double check the Topology stats here. Give me a second. I swear he was 10. I swear he had 10 wins. No, he's 9-4-0. 9-4-0, 5'7" with a 70.5-inch reach. I anticipate Jamie's reach being a little bit shorter. I want to say it's like, he's got a short reach. I think it's going to be close to 67, maybe 68 inches. John Giannis has got those long monkey arms. And, yeah, he's got, dude, yeah. I think he's going to have the reach advantage. So, Jamie Siraj is a primary grappler. This guy's training at a TriStar. A lot of these Canadian fighters on this card, actually, no, not really, but a lot of Canadian fighters in general train at a TriStar. I'm super excited for his performance because I watched a few of his recent interviews on, I think it was Full Send MMA, had an interview out on his health problems that he was dealing with earlier in his career, and this guy has overcome a lot of adversity, and you see that in his fights. This guy almost gets submitted in round one a lot of the times. It's crazy, and a lot of the times, too, this guy's pulling guard to get the fight to the mat, where he's advantageous. He is extremely resilient. Like I said, he's gotten caught in deep submission attempts in a lot of his regional scene fights, and he's pulled through in all those fights. The fights that I'm referencing, I believe those submissions happened in round one, or the submission attempts happened in round one. And it, could be because Jamie's pulling guard, and that just shows how confident he is in his grappling. Granted, it was on the regional scene. He's not fighting the best grapplers in general, but I think that he's going to try to get this fight to the ground early and often. And John Giannis is a guy that historically has struggled with the grappling. He's been submitted on the regional scene by a Brazilian who was 7-3 now. His record was a slightly better when he fought John Giannis, but regardless, he took him down with ease and was able to get the back and submit him. Similarly to how he was submitted against Austin Bashi in his UFC debut. I think that this is kind of a setup fight here. Jamie Siraj is the Canadian. He's lined as a minus 256 favorite right now, which kind of makes sense. He's going to have all of the grappling advantages in the world. But if for whatever reason this fight does take place on the feet, John Giannis is going to be severely better than Jamie in the boxing. This guy's got super nice leg kicks. He mixes in the leg kicks, the body kicks, and the high kicks super well. They're sharp, they're fast, they're crisp. And he's got really good boxing. This guy's got serious power in his hooks. He's got power in his overhand left, and he's going to be severely. Jamie Siraj is going to be severely outmatched if this fight takes place on the feet. Luckily, I don't think he does. Yeah, I don't think it does. Just because Jamie is going to aggressively try to grapple here, whether it's getting a body trip takedown, a double leg, or pulling guard. He's going to get this fight to the mat, and I'm predicting a round 2 submission. You can get Jamie Siraj by submission at plus 190 right now, was the line on BetOnline. But I also kind of like the under 2.5 here. It was at minus 110. In this fight, the lines have kind of been sitting at the same spot the whole week. Jamie Siraj opened as a minus 250 favorite. He's sitting at minus 256 right now. And the over-under opened at 2.5. It's still at 2.5, and it fluctuated a little bit, but the line is back to, a pick'em on whether or not the fight goes over 2.5 rounds. I really like the under here because if for whatever reason, like I said, this fight doesn't take place on the feet, Jamie's going to be at a severe disadvantage, and John Giannis has some power in his hands. Give me 1 second. I'm going to find something. I want to see how many significant strikes Giannis won or landed in his fight against Bashi. Because I could like the under for Giannis here on strikes. Yeah, this guy landed literally no significant strikes on Austin Bashi. I don't want to say that happens here, just because Jamie is not as good of a grappler as a guy like Austin Bashi, but similar things could happen. I think Jamie's going to get it to the mat, and like I said, I'm predicting a round 2 sub. I think there is value, like I said, on the under 2.5 here, because if it does take place on the feet, John is going to box Jamie up. He's been knocked out before, so if this fight takes place on the feet, John could have enough in the tank to finish him, but likely, I think it's going to be a Jamie round 2 sub. Moving on to the next fight on the card. Mark Vologdin versus John Castaneda. Mark Vologdin is one of my new favorite fighters. I'm going to remove all the bias here, because he did lose on the Dana White's Contender Series, and his striking defense is absolutely terrible. But it was an insane fight on Contender Series against Adrian Martinelli. If you haven't seen that fight, not even for film purposes, go back and watch it because it was just an absolute banger. You'll get goosebumps because it was that good. But John Castaneda, 21, 8-0, 34 years old, with standing at 5'6" with a 71-inch reach. Mark Vologdin, the much younger fighter, he turns 26 on the 18th. That's his birthday. And 136 pounds, 5'3", with a 65-inch reach. This fight's going to be taking place at bantamweight, so, both guys are obviously going to be at 135 pounds. Mark Vologdin's a guy that looks like he could fight at flyweight, but he's super thick. He's really, he's a really thick guy. This guy reminds me of The Boss Baby. I don't know if you guys seen that movie, but this dude, literally, if you go in there, if you just watch his Contender Series fight, this guy, he literally looks like this. This is what he reminds me of, because he's a full-blown adult, in a very violent sport, but he just looks like a kid. He looks like he's 12 out there. It looks like he's 12 or a baby. He's got a baby face, and it's absolutely hilarious, but he's super violent in there. He's not afraid to get hit. Like I said, his striking defense, terrible, but he's super high volume, and he's got some power. We saw him drop Adrian Martinelli twice in that Dana White's Contender Series fight. Once in round 3 from a body shot, and once in round 1 from an uppercut. I want to say it was an uppercut. It was either an uppercut or an overhand right. But he dropped Martinelli twice in that fight. And if Martinelli didn't get the grappling going in round 3, I feel like Mark could have won that fight. Like I said, he is an extremely exciting fighter. Sexy Mexi, John Castaneda, UFC vet here. Geez, I didn't realize 69% of the public were on Mark Vologdin. But all the money's on John Castaneda. This guy opened up as an underdog, and the money has poured in on him. And so now Mark's a plus 105 dog. But yeah, you can see he was the plus 110 underdog earlier in the week. And right now, Mark Vologdin's sitting at plus 105. So interesting line movement there, but I think John Castaneda's, the UFC bet. He could pull off a crafty vet move, strike from the outside, mix in the grappling. We did see Volodin struggle with his takedown defense, but that was also because he was fighting super violently, which, maybe he comes in with a slightly better game plan than he did in the Dana White's Contender Series fight, just because he doesn't have to worry about trying to get signed. So, like I said, I think John could be advantageous at range and be the slightly better fighter, more well-rounded overall, but the pace and pressure from Mark could pose a problem for him. He's 34 years old. Mark's going to be the younger fighter. And on top of that, we've seen John Castaneda dropped and wobbled before. And Mark's a guy that's got power. Despite his disgustingly short reach disadvantage here, he's got a 65-inch reach. I think he's literally at a 6-inch reach disadvantage. He's extremely good at closing the distance and cutting off and getting angles where he's landing effective strikes and landing powerful strikes. And he's got good kicks. He's really well-rounded. He looks like he's training super hard, too. I've been following this guy on Instagram, and this guy's super locked in. When Merab's training in the PI, he's getting reps with Merab. He's getting rounds with Merab. He's, training with great guys in Vegas. He used to train in that Swedish gym that Kamzat trained at, but I don't think either of those guys train there anymore. I'm super excited for him. I don't think he'll ever be a guy that's in the top 15 consistently. Maybe he'll get on a streak and beat enough guys to maybe win and break the top 15, but consistently holding position there, I don't think so. I think his fight style's too risky, and I think that he can get clipped, and that'll affect his performance in the long run. But I'm curious to see how he performs here, just because he, like I said, isn't fighting for a contract this time. He's already gotten a bonus. He's already gotten the respect from Dana. If he performs, not that he's not an exciting fighter, but if he performs in a way that maybe is less exciting and more economic and more ergonomical, I don't think he has to worry about, Dana disliking him just because of the performance he put on in his initial fight on Dana White's Contender Series, which on YouTube, the UFC is deemed the quote-unquote greatest fight of all time. I think they have a few other videos titled the exact same, but one of the greatest fights of all time. Like I said, it's worth a watch. But moving on to the next fight, we're taking J.J. Aldrich versus Jamie Lynn Horth. J.J. Aldrich, the UFC vet here. I'm not even going to really break this down, honestly. JJ's super boring to watch. She's slow. Jamie's going to have the speed advantage. I think she could be slightly better in the clinch. Maybe. But like I said, if you guys want to see how I'm playing this fight, links in the bio, or the bio and the description. I'm not going to be breaking this down. Just, I don't. It's going to be bad enough that we have to watch this for 15 minutes. For me to talk about it for another 10 to 15 minutes is, maybe not 10 to 15 minutes, but 10 minutes is not, no thanks. But for my official prediction, give me the Canadian, give me Jamie Lynn Horth. Like I said, she's going to be faster. I think she could win in the clinch. That's about it. Moving on, we're going to hit the chats because we do have some live chats, and we do have another women's fight coming on to the next fight on the card. So we are going to break this up and talk about what we got here. So we got Aaron Carbone, LFG. Yes, Aaron, I know it is UFC Winnipeg, and I know we're coming off a banger card in UFC Miami at UFC 327. But I think this this card has some underrated matchups that could be low-key good, other than the Canadians they snuck on there for Canadian moral support value for this card to put some Canadians on there. I think there could be some stinkers just because they did that, but there's also some good Canadians, so I don't want to, shit on it too much. James, HR5XT, you think Olberg, the real deal? I think he could be A guy that fights in the top 3 of the light heavyweight division for a long time. He's going to be out. He's old, though. That's the thing. He's 34. In these heavier weight classes, you can get away with being old. But I think, too, that the ACL tear isn't good for him. I mean, that's not good for anybody, especially not a 34-year-old. And I think there's guys that are also super hungry. Maybe not Jiri. I think Jiri's fight IQ is absolutely terrible. I think he's one of the most low IQ fighters in the division. And I think it's like something that he could fix too. But as far as Carlos Ulberg being the real deal, I think he fights in the top 3 of the light heavyweight division for a long time. Whether he's champ or in any one of those positions in between, I think he's top 3 for a while. We got Andrew Pistoia, my dog. Love the streams. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. UFC GOAT. Who is my UFC GOAT? So, I don't want to say I have a UFC GOAT. I love guys that perform exactly how they're supposed to in fights. You know, I don't like guys that go in there and test their newfound striking. Especially when I have a bet on him. Like, you don't need to be going in there to test your newfound striking because that shit never works. I don't like guys that go in there and try to not knock out opponents based on matchups. You know, guys that are overly cautious. I like guys that go in there and are consistent and put on consistent performances. Those are my favorite type of fighters. A few off the top of my head. Steve Garcia. Give me a second. Gotta hydrate. Steve Garcia, a guy that goes in there and, you know, does what he's supposed to in his fights. You know, goes in there and tries to find the knockouts. I like guys that... I'm trying to think of who else. Off the top of my head, guys that go in there and do what they're supposed to do. Doo-Ho Choi. You know, a guy with 80+% knockout rate. You know, his fight just got announced. I love Doo-Ho Choi just because he goes out there and he swings and you can count on him to swing and throw and not do things that are a diversion from the normal game plan and what fighters are good at. But Andrew, like I said, appreciate your comment. But yeah, like I said, I like these guys that go in there and just do what they're supposed to do. That's my favorite kind of fighter. Guys that go in there and do what they're supposed to do. A guy could go in there and grapple, you know, for 25 minutes hard. But I appreciate that. So, like, if you're going to do that consistently, I like that. Because I'm a guy that is more concerned about betting on the fights than, you know, who actually wins from a fan perspective. But moving on, we've got Melissa Croden, the Canadian, taking on Daria Zalesnyakova. Another women's MMA fight that I don't feel like talking about, but Melissa Croden is the Canadian fighter here. She could have a grappling advantage because Daria has 0 negative grappling. Terrible grappling. The Melissa Mullins fight, I think she fought her twice. Yeah, she did fight her twice because I remember, I cannot be laying chalk on these women's MMA fights. That is something I'm not doing anymore. No more chalk on women's MMA. But, yeah, Daria Zalesnyakova, terrible grappling, but I think this fight takes place on the feet. Her face gets destroyed every time she fights. And I think Melissa could destroy her face here. She's going to be older, Melissa. But, yeah, I think she's Canadian. I think she could also win in round 3. She's going to just destroy the face of Daria. I think this fight takes place on the feet just because Melissa likes to strike. But for my pick, give me Melissa Croden next. We're going to hit the chat again because I see we got some more chats. Heather. Shout out, Heather. Truth. Yes. Big preach. Yes, Heather. Truth. We love that. Aaron, my guy. Mick Tikbeck. Yeah, dude. That's a good point. Mick Tikbeck is a guy that goes out there and does exactly what he's supposed to do. Yeah, dude, he set the freaking takedown record against... I was there, and I saw that takedown record against Chris Curtis. And I saw Sean Strickland screaming at him. But yeah, I agree. He goes out there and does exactly what he's supposed to do. Bella says she appreciates that too. Good. Yeah. Guy, yeah. Because, if you're tailing me, you should appreciate that because that's kind of the bet style. We bet on guys that, we think are, or the odds have disrespected. We try to find value there. So good on that. We like guys that perform consistently with the same game plan. Next, we got Tanner Boser taking on Gokram Sirakram. I can't pronounce that. Goku's I don't know. But yeah, Tanner, a guy that used to be in the UFC. He was cut, fought in UAE Warriors, won, and then was re-signed by the UFC, I think because this fight is in Canada. Because that performance honestly wasn't too impressive in UAE. But he was, I want to say, 5-5 in the UFC. Not the most impressive performances. He cut down to 205, which I think is, not the worst move for him. He's semi-athletic in his last two fights, which he, lost both. But... Or no. He didn't lose both. He beat... Yeah, I just watched that too. He beat Alexa Kumar. But yeah, Tanner Boser, it's not 205 pounds. This is a heavyweight fight. 6'2" with a 75.5-inch reach. Gokram, the Bellator guy, 240 pounds, 6'3" with a 76-inch reach. So Gokram, I think, is going to have the takedown and wrestling advantage, but honestly, his defensive wrestling is terrible, Gokram. His defensive wrestling is absolutely terrible. Not that Tanner's going to be testing it here, but it sucks. This guy was taken out a bunch of times in his Bellator fights, and it was really just bad. And like the fights that he was losing against Oleg Popov, which, that's a smaller guy like Tanner. Not that, like I said, not that Tanner's going to be testing his grappling, but he suffered there and was completely dominated through 3 rounds. The judges gave him a round. I want to say it was round 3, but he really didn't win 3 rounds there. Oleg completely dominated him. And then he was Kimura'd, which is not a good look, especially in Bellator. But Tanner, like I said, is a guy that, was mediocre at the UFC. The UFC heavyweight division right now is not that exciting, but except for Josh. I don't want to say that because Josh Hokett just put on the performance of a lifetime, but they're signing him because he's in Canada. Like, not that he's that good, So, given that this is in Canada and given that this is going to be a close fight, I do give Gokram the takedown, like I said, advantage here because he does have some really good offensive wrestling. But I think Tanner could be victorious in a decision. I like this fight to go the distance. We haven't been talking about bets on this fight. I do like the fight to go the distance just because I don't think Tanner strikes. He's really high volume. He's got a really nice leg kick, and he sticks the jab out there awkwardly, but I don't think that Tanner is going to be knocking Gokram out. I don't think Gokram does have good ground and pound. I want to say Gokram does have good ground and pound, but I don't think Gokram is going to be implementing the ground and pound here. Tanner's a guy that does look to get back up. I think both these guys could be, semi-high volume, especially Tanner. Not really Gokram unless it gets to the ground and he's like landing ground and pound on the ground, but not really too damaging shots. But, both these guys this could be a high volume decision. Just because Tanner is athletic. He's a guy that has cut down to 205 and looked half decent there. So, for my official pick, give me Tanner. But, like I said, I think the values might be on the fight to go to the distance or the over on the significant strike props. But moving on, we're going to hit the next fight. We've got, this is a banger, Robert Valentin versus Julian LeBlanc. We're going to hit the chat real quick just because I did see that there were some live chats popping up. Heather hitting us again. You think the UFC is rigging or fixing fights matchup-wise or changing it up? Matchup-wise, I think the UFC does give guys extremely favorable matchups. I don't think there's rigged fights. You saw the Isaac Dolgarian fight, and there was another fight that James Krause was related in. You can look it up. I don't remember what it was, but there's been fights where fights have clearly been fixed, like Isaac Dolgarian going out there and losing to Yadier Del Val in round 1, and then you see, I mean, you just know because you just saw the Yadier Del Val performance against Jordan Leavitt. So whether or not the UFC absolutely gives people favorable matchups, changing it up, I think the UFC is also trying to set up exciting fights too. So, but yeah, all right, moving on to this middleweight fight, we've got Robert Valentin, 0-3 in the UFC. This guy came into the UFC 10-3, being the victor of Ultimate Fighter, right? So he's 31 years old, 100. Yeah, like I said, this is going to be middleweight, 6'2" with a 77.5-inch reach. Julian LeBlanc, 185 pounds. This guy's fought at welterweight before. I really think that's his true weight class. 6'2", and his reach will be identified later. Robert Valentin's absolutely going to be at a reach advantage here. I think Robert Valentin is going to be at a size advantage here too. He's going to be the better athlete. I know he's 0-3 in the UFC, but that does not reflect what this guy's capable of. This guy's super violent, and he's got some insane grappling. I was watching some of his fights on the regional scene, and super violent guy goes to absolute war with some of these guys on the regional scene, taking tons of punches, dishing out damage, and mixing in the grappling. He's got a really good grappling game. Somewhat decent wrestling, to get the fight to the mat. But like I said, really disgusting grappling. He looked fantastic in round 1 against Loader. I feel like this guy has just gotten the short end of the stick in his UFC experiences, right? Because he got caught in a crucifix against Ryan Loader. Honestly, he was dominating that fight until that point. He got caught in that fight. Atiba Gauthier is a terrible matchup for him. He did have a bad game plan. I will give him that, just to stand and bang, which is not a good look. But Therese Finney fight, he just got completely just destroyed on the grappling, and it was still close. It was a split decision. So let me confirm that. I want to say it was a split decision. Don't crucify me in the comments, boys. I don't want to be giving you guys out bad info. Yeah, split decision against Finney, because he was landing the damage, especially in rounds 2 and 3. I think that, and this makes me like it even more, 66% of the people on Topology are on LeBlanc, 34% on Valentin, and I think it's just because of that 0-3 UFC record, which is very misleading to me. I bet on Valentin at -125, and boy, did I wish I had gotten that plus 105 underdog money, because this guy opened as an underdog. Right now, he's currently sitting at -145, so I did beat that line. I'm fairly confident that Robert Valentin goes out here and dominates this fight. I think he's just going to be better overall everywhere. Maybe not the more technical striker. LeBlanc is a very technical striker. He's got a Muay Thai, karate, kickboxing style. Southpaw fighter. Very good with the leg, body, and head kick rotation. But like I said, Valentin is a guy that is very physical out there. LeBlanc has fought at welterweight before, and Valentin knows how to use his physical presence. I think he's going to go out there and use that physical presence. And whether it's, punching the face of LeBlanc awkwardly, like I said, I think LeBlanc's going to be the more technical striker, but he's going to be more physical out there. He's going to be putting a pressure on, and he's got decent cardio too. Both these guys have decent cardio. LeBlanc's a slow starter. He's got a lot of late finishes, and he's got a good judo trip takedown. He's pretty semi well-rounded on the ground, but I think this could be a levels thing here, and this is a guy, LeBlanc, that I don't think would necessarily be in the UFC if this fight wasn't in Canada, or this card wasn't in Canada. So, give me Valentin. The UFC knows that this guy's exciting. I think he's better everywhere, and I think he's just going to, honestly, I think he's going to finish Julian LeBlanc But if for some reason Valentin comes out there a little bit cautious just because of his last performance against Gauthier, the plus 600 on BetOnline for Robert Valentin by decision is kind of enticing as well. Just because LeBlanc's actually never been finished. And he could be defensively sound enough, maybe in the grappling, to not get submitted. If Valentin wins, I do think it's by submission. Like I said, I think Julian LeBlanc is the more technical striker. If Valentin wins, I think it's going to be by submission. But there's a reason why this fight is on the is listed as the featured prelim. I think it's going to be very exciting, in the sense that Robert Valentin is going to put on a performance and pressure and push LeBlanc. And I'm not sure LeBlanc's got the answers for him. I don't see how LeBlanc's going to be firing those southpaw kicks on a guy that's going to be aggressively trying to take him down and or throw heavy on the feet with a lot of pressure. So moving on to the main card, we've got Dennis Buzukja versus Marcio Barbosa. We're going to go flip back to the chat here, maybe see if anybody's got on the chat. Nope, no chats yet. All right, but yeah, Dennis Buzukja taking on Marcio Barbosa. Dennis Buzukja, 155 pounds, 5'8", with a 70-inch reach. Marcio Barbosa making his UFC debut, coming off that disgusting knockout on the Contender Series. 5'8" with a 70.5-inch reach. 95% of the people on Tapology are on Barbosa, 5% on Buzukja. So what's concerning to me is if this fight gets out of round one, right? Which it has in Buzukja's last fight. I get that Jamal Emmers' knockout was a terrible look, getting knocked out that quickly. But this guy also almost beat Francis Marshall, who I think is a half-decent fighter. So, and Marcio Barbosa is a guy that's lost it twice in round two. Yeah, in the LFA 2, Gabriel Santos is good, granted, and Gabriel Santos is really good, actually, so I'm not going to discredit that to him. But, twice, this guy's only gone to decision once. The minus 495 or whatever he's at right now, to me, isn't worth it. I think that you should play maybe a round one knockout on Marcio Barbosa, because I think he's going to walk forward, he's going to look to pressure, he's going to look to bang, and Dennis is a guy that's been chinned before. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibilities. I think it's even likely, right? I think it's even likely that Marcio Barbosa goes out there and knocks out Dennis Buzukja in round one. But if it doesn't, this fight could look dicey. So the way to play this fight is Marcio Barbosa round one KO or Dennis Buzukja moneyline. You're getting plus money on both of those. Stagger it, so you're making more money on the Marcio Barbosa round one knockout, but the money line on Dennis Buzukja is enough to hedge and position yourself in a manner that which you're making profit either way. So I kind of think that's how this goes. If this fight isn't finished in round one with a Barbosa knockout, I think Dennis is live for a win. But if it does, then you cashed a plus 100 ticket on Marcio Barbosa. Moving on. We are going to Thiago Moises versus Gage Young. We've got Thiago Moises, the young UFC vet. Wow, 64% of people are on Thiago. 155 pounds, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. We've got Gage Young, the UFC relative newbie. 25 years old, 155 pounds, 5'9", with a 70-inch reach. These guys are going to size up very nicely. So, Thiago Moises, like I said, UFC vet. This guy's looked really good. He has a submission win over Melky Costa. And not that I think Melky Costa is a guy that's going to do crazy things in the UFC, but he's on a streak right now and he's in the top 15. And that's a pretty decent win, right? But Gage Young's a guy that also can get up pretty frequently. Like, he looked really good in the Quillen Salco fight. His get-up ability there was good, but I don't think Quillen's a guy that also has too insane top time or top control. But, excuse me. Give me a second. I'm going to get a drink. Yeah, Quillen Salco, not a guy that is really the best at top control. But, Gage Young looked somewhat decent there. He was able to get up. And then in his next performance against Mahashate, high volume, great. We played Gage by decision there in the premium. We cashed that. If you're in the premium members chat, like I said, that chat is available to all our members of my Winible. The link is in the bio. If Thiago can get this fight to the ground, which I'm not sure if he does, I think he's going to dominate it. I think he's got better top control time than any guy that Gage Young has faced. But if he doesn't, then Gage Young is going to keep this fight at range and kind of piece up Thiago. Thiago is really good on the ground. He's really dangerous on the ground. I think he could be live for a sub. I really do. What's not... he could just stop carrying at a certain point. Guys, like I said, he's been in the UFC a while. He doesn't have to fight forever. Give me, for my official pick, give me Thiago Moy. Give me Gage Young. I think he's going to be able to defend enough takedowns and win a close split decision here. Moving on. Jasmine Jasdavicius versus Karine Silva. All right, so this fight I actually do want to talk about. So Jasmine, a girl that's super exciting, very exciting on the ground, landing that grappling, that ground and pound, super exciting in that sense. Karine Silva, a girl that has a ton of finishes in the women's division. As her career has progressed in the UFC, those finishes have kind of slowed down. But, regardless, she's super dangerous on the ground. I think Jasmine's going to dominate here, though. If she gets this fight to the ground outside of a Karine guillotine, she's going to dominate, Karine's got power on the feet, and we did just see Jasmine get knocked out by round 1 KO against Manon Fiorot, which I didn't expect. I played the over in that fight. We lost there in the premium. Full transparency, we lost there in the premium. But yeah, Jasmine's going to dominate here. Give me Jasmine by decision or round 3 finish. Next, Mandel Nalo taking on Jai Herbert. Mandel Nalo, Canadian fighter coming off of Dana White's Contender Series, 6 foot with a 75-inch reach. Jai Herbert, 6'1" with a 77-inch reach, 37 years old, 36 for Mando Nalo. I am super excited for this one. Not for how this fight plays out, but for how the value... I think there's value on this fight, right? Because Mandel Nalo, a guy that's never gone to decision, right? This fight is lined at plus 160 to go to decision. And Jai Herbert has gone to decision in the last 5 of his fights. Post Ilia Topuria flatline, this guy's timid out there. He's not willing to exchange in the pocket like he used to do in Cage Warriors. And he's just timid out there. And because of the way Jai Herbert fights, I think this fight does go the distance. I love that goes the distance prop at plus 160 here. Mandel Nalo is not a guy that's going and fighting like a bat out of hell. This guy is patient, and he just looks for an opportunity to finish the fights. And what if that doesn't happen here? Jai Herbert's not going to be putting himself in danger, If he fights characteristic to the last 5 of his fights, he's not going to be putting himself in danger. And Mandel Nalo has a loss where he broke his ankle, which is a fight that absolutely could have gone to decision. I think this fight goes to decision here. Mandel Nalo is super dangerous. He's a really good counter striker. He's got really nasty leg kicks. He can apply some forward pressure sometimes. He's got a really good jab he can use. But at the end of the day, Jai Herbert's going to be sticking the body jab, sticking the single face jab, sticking the leg kicks, circling on the outside. And I think this fight is just going to be a 15-minute medium to low volume snooze fest, which is good for betting. So I appreciate that from a betting standpoint. Hopefully it plays out the way we predicted. But if this fight goes according to how Jai Herbert fights recently, it's going to be boring. And Mandel Nalo, like I said, isn't a guy that goes and fights like a bat out of hell. You go and see these fights, he's losing round 1 by a ton of grappling. You know what I'm saying? This fight could take place in the clinch a bunch, too. I could see a ton of clinch minutes taking place here. And it's just a fight that I absolutely think goes to decision, just because of I think there's so much value there. So give me the fight to go to decision. Official pick, give me Jai Herbert to just pick and poke at range. He's a better distance fighter. So give me Jai to go to win by decision. Moving on, we've got, I'm excited for this one. The co-main event, Kyler Phillips versus Charles Jourdain. Kyler Phillips, 2-fight loss streak, 5'8" with a 72-inch reach. Charles Jourdain, after moving down to bantamweight, this guy is 2-0 to the division. 5'9" with a 68-inch reach, right? So 86% of the people on Topology are on Charles Jourdain here. But there's been money coming in on Kyler Phillips, and I kind of understand why. After going back and watching the film, I kind of like Kyler Phillips here. He is a guy. There didn't used to be a blueprint on how to beat this guy. He's got wins over Raoni Barcelos. He's got wins over Song Yadong. And people weren't keen to the idea that he completely gasses out after 7.5 minutes of his fights, especially if the fight isn't going at the pace at which he dictates. What do I mean by that? If Kyler Phillips is dictating the pace in his fights, he wins. If he's not dictating the pace, he loses. You go and look at his last 2 losses against Vinicius Oliveira, who started out of the gate pressuring Kyler, and Kyler still won round 1. He did have to expend a bunch of energy to do so, and he wobbled and almost dropped Vinicius 2 times, I believe, in that round. But he did win round 1 pretty convincingly. But Vinicius, like I said, is a guy that has an unrelenting pace, and that posed a problem for Kyler Phillips. Like I said, the blueprint on how to beat Kyler is out there. It's kind of up to Charles Jourdain on whether or not he uses that blueprint. Because from what I've seen, I don't think Charles Jourdain is a guy that puts the same kind of pressure on guys like Rob Font did, specifically in that Kyler Phillips fight, and like Vinicius Oliveira did against Kyler Phillips. I don't think Charles Jourdain is that guy. There's a lot of people that are really high on Charles Jourdain right now, especially just because he finished Davey Grant, he finished Victor Henry, a guy who had never been finished before in the UFC, but both those guys are unks. Both those guys are old as hell, granddad status, and I think this could be a great bounce back spot for Kyler Phillips. Another thing that I really want to mention is that Kyler Phillips is extremely dangerous in round 1. Like I said, he dropped Vinicius in round 1. He's dropped other fighters in round 1. And Charles Jourdain is not a guy that's exempt from getting dropped. This guy got dropped by Josh Kulabau. This guy got dropped twice by Gene Silva. That's more excusable, is up at featherweight. And he's gotten dropped by somebody else in the UFC. Let me double check who it was. And it was in round 1. The Korean Superboy, again at 145, but he was dropped. Not necessarily a good look against a guy that I think has a higher chance to finish the fight in round 1 than the odds imply. Maybe round 1 is a 10-8. A lot of people are saying, round 3 can be a 10-8. Charles, you're lying for the guillotine. I don't think Kyler's a legit BJJ black belt. I don't think he's getting caught in one of these guillotines by Charles Jourdain. I'm actually heavily on Kyler well, maybe not just heavily on Kyler Phillips, but I think it's just a great way to make money. I mean, Kyler Phillips at plus money, okay, right? You get him at plus money, and then he's gonna, I think Kyler Phillips wins this fight 9 times out of 10 in round 1. I think Kyler Phillips wins round 1 9.5 really times out of 10 against Charles Jourdain. And you're getting him at plus money. So a guy that's guaranteed to win round 1 at plus money, what is Charles Jourdain's live line going to look like if he's getting his absolute ass handed to him at the end of round 1? I think there's a guaranteed way to make money here. And it's kind of by playing Kyler Phillips now when he's a plus. I mean, he's plus 110 right now. We got him at plus 130 in the premium. I'm giving you that heat here, just because that line moved. I'll give you that free bet. Kyler Phillips plus 130, and I'll give you, the angle at which I'm trying to play this, which is Kyler Phillips. I really think Kyler Phillips could do enough to even win 3 rounds here, because I just don't think that Charles Jourdain is going to put a pressure on him. And if he does, if Charles Jourdain goes out there and looks to put a pressure on him immediately, what if he gets checked, and stops that pressure, right? Like Kyler lands a really nice overhand right down the pipe and drops Charles Jourdain. What does that pressure look like after that happens? Maybe he's more timid in this fight. Maybe that cockiness goes away, right? I'm a fan of both these fighters, but I'm pretty confident that Kyler wins this fight early. And if not, you're going to get a plus money number. So much so that Kyler could win this fight in round 1 and you don't even get to that point, right? And so much so, I think there's just an easy way to make money here, and it's bet the Kyler Phillips money line at plus money, and then when he beats Charles Jourdain in round 1, he's going to be plus money and lock in your profit. You know what I mean? So for my official prediction, give me Kyler Phillips round 1 knockout. I'm being bold. Round 1 knockout. Kyler Phillips. Moving on. I also like the under 2.5 a little bit because, Charles Jourdain, maybe I say, he's not going to get that guillotine. He could. Nothing's out of the complete realm of possibilities. A lot of people were saying that Vicente Luque couldn't get that round 1 sub last weekend. We cashed on the round 1 sub. I honestly didn't think it was going to happen because we also played, Kelvin by decision. We still made a ton of money on that fight, statistically in profit because we just cashed an absolute. It was like 30-1 the round 1 sub, but nothing's off the table in MMA. So you do want to cover your methods to victory. But I do like the under the 2.5 here. But for the main event, we are going to Gilbert Burns versus Mike Malott. Gilbert Burns is on a 4-fight loss streak. Geez, 5'10" with a 71-inch reach. Mike Malott, 13, 2-1, 3-fight win streak, 6'1" with a 73-inch reach. Mike Malott. The money, it's funny. You can see where the sharp money is at on these fights based on where the percentage of people that win on Tapology, or the percentage of people who think is going to win on Tapology is based on where the line movement has occurred throughout the week. I thought there was some value earlier in the week on Gilbert Burns. Everybody was keen to it. I think his fight does go over. I think that Mike Malott could be smart and pace himself and just, look to... How I think this fight plays out is I think Mike Malott comes out with a good game plan and just tries to outpoint Gilbert for 25 minutes and just maybe try to find the knockout but not go all out for it, but just try to land more on Gilbert for 25 minutes. And that's exactly what I think happens here. Gilbert could have some success. He could, drop, wobble Malott. I don't think he's the best in the world, and I think the only reason why he's getting this main card spot is because he's Canadian and is because he is the best Canadian prospect right now. But give me Malott by decision here. I think he's just going to, Gilbert Burns is old. He's going to be 40. Mike Malott, 34. He's the younger fighter here. But like I said, he lost to Neil Magny. He could drop the ball here. He could. He's dropped the ball before. Why couldn't he do it now? I thought there was more value on Gilbert Burns back when he was +3, +400. But, maybe Mike Malott decision's a play here, because I think he does. I'm convinced that he comes out with a good game plan. I'm convinced that he's not going to try to blow this main card position in Canada and lose in front of his home crowd. I really think he's going to be coming out here with a good game plan. So I like Malott by decision. So for my official pick, give me Malott by decision. If you guys want to see all of my official bets, like I said, link in the bio, link in the description. We've got a 7-day free trial going on in the Winible. We are down 19 units on the year, but we are on a 3-event win streak. So we're building momentum. We haven't had one of those weeks where we've absolutely taken off yet, but I'm absolutely feeling one soon. It's just a matter of time where we're going to be on those 9, 10, 11 fight or 11-week win streaks, cashing, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 unit plus weeks It's going to be exciting. But if you guys aren't interested in the paid stuff, like I said, we do have a free Telegram, free fight breakdowns, and free bets every single week. Like I said, links in the bio. We will see you guys next time. We might be going live for UFC Winnipeg. Maybe we'll see. But as always, we will see you next time for the early picks video